So in this video, we're going to be looking at lighting and shadows in 3ds Max. So first of all, we're going to set our renderer to V-Ray. So go to rendering and render setup, scroll all the way down, click on assign renderer and set your production renderer to V-Ray advanced. And then we can close this. Okay, I'm going to maximize my perspective view. So right click on that little plus and click on maximize viewport. And then I'm just going to create some basic objects here. So let's create a floor. I'm just going to use a box for that. And let's create a box and maybe another box. And let's create a sphere as well. Okay, so we've got some objects in our scene. And because we're using the V-Ray renderer, we're going to be using V-Ray lights. So if you click on the little light icon here on the right hand side, usually this is on photometric. So we're going to click on the drop down menu and select V-Ray. It will give you 4 options, but we're only going to look at the V-Ray light. So just click on that and then you can click and drag to just draw out a light and release, and that will create a V-Ray light for you. So as you can see, your whole scene will go dark because that light is right on the floor. So I'm going to press W to move, and I'm going to move this up, and you'll see that the light will actually start to appear. There we go. And I'm just going to do a quick render here. So there we go. I've got a very nice render going on. So as you can see, this is quite a low resolution. It's currently set to 640 by 480. So let's go into rendering setup or render setup. And let's just change our output size to HDTV, which is 1920 by 1080. And let's render that again. So as you can see, we've got some nice soft shadows going on here. They don't look too great. They're a bit noisy, but we're going to talk about that soon. So let me just show you if we just move our light a little bit to the side and just rotate it. So I'm pressing E on the keyboard to bring up rotation. And let's just maybe create some longer shadows, something like that. Let's do a quick render. So first of all, let's talk about the lighting properties. So if you click on your light and you go to the modify panel, this will bring up all the different options for that light. So first of all, you can change the type between plain, dome, sphere or mesh. So sphere will be a round light like that. I usually work with the planes. They work pretty well. You can also set it to a dome, which is like a half sphere, something like that. And you can also set it to mesh. Okay, so we're basically just going to look at the plane, which is quite simple, and you can do a lot with it, so that's cool. And if we go down, you'll get to the multiplier. It's currently set to 30, and that's basically the strength or the brightness of your light. So if I change this to say, let's change to 50, you can see that it actually increased the intensity. If you change it to 100, it's getting really bright, and if you change it down to, let's say, 5, then it's not that bright. So let's set that back to 30 for now. And then you get the color. So you can actually change the color of your light. So let's add a blue light in here, and you'll see immediately that the color of your objects will also start to change because you're actually using a blue light now. So let's set that back to white. And then you've got the size of your light. So this is really important if you want to change the way your shadows look. So let me show you. If we increase the size of that light, if you look at the light here, and if I up these values, the light will actually get bigger and brighter, because the bigger the light, the brighter the light. So even if that multiplier is still set to 30, it's just because the area of the light's bigger. So let's set that down to maybe 10. And then if we do a render, you will see that the shadows will be really soft. So that's something to remember. The bigger the light, the softer the shadows, and the smaller the light, the harder the shadows. So let me show you quickly. I'm going to make the light really small. So let's bring that down and let's bring that in as well. So really small light, but as you can see, we're losing some of the intensity. So now we need to up the multiplier. So let's make it, okay, let's maybe set that to something quite high. Maybe something, let's try 1000. Because we're using a really small light. So let's do a render. And there you go. You can see some hard shadows going on. So really easy to remember. So the bigger the light, softer shadow, small light, harsh shadow. And yeah, just change the size here. And remember to change the multiplier or the intensity when you're changing the size as well. Okay, you can also switch off the shadows. So if you untick that, it will still render the light, but there won't be any shadows, something like that. Let me just change the size a little bit bigger. Okay, and let's set the intensity down to about 700 maybe, or even 500. And then let's enable cast shadows again. And another thing that I want to show you, let's say we've got the light kind of somewhere there, okay, and I render this. You will actually see the light in your scene. You see that black rectangle here in the scene? That's actually the backside of the light, and sometimes you don't really want to see that. So very importantly, then you need to set your light to invisible. The light will still be on and you'll still have shadows and all of that, but if you render, you won't actually see the light in your scene, which is really handy. Okay, next we're going to look at the quality of the shadows. So if I zoom in here a little bit, you'll see that the shadows are quite noisy. Okay, there you can see shadows on this side, very noisy, very noisy. So let's close that down. So to increase the quality of your shadows, what you need to do, you need to scroll down to your sampling, and then your subdivisions is currently set to 8, and I'm going to up that to 32. And let's do a quick render again. And what you will see, it's going to take a little bit longer to render. So usually only set those subdivisions to 32 once you're happy with your scene and when you're ready to do your final render, and then you up those subdivisions to 32 or 64. 32 is usually high enough, and as you can see, if I zoom in here now, it's looking a lot better, nice and smooth. And yeah, as I say, you can up it to 64, but usually 32 is high enough for me. Bear in mind that it will render a little bit longer if you use a higher subdivision for your sampling on the lights. So that's the basics of using V-Ray lights in 3ds Max, and I will see you in the next video.